Purple Warriors podcast. I'm your host, Ali Sugars, and thank you for joining us. This podcast is about raising awareness for domestic and family abuse by allowing survivors to share their own journeys to recovery. You will find practical yet powerful information and tools that you can immediately implement into your own journey to recovery. You will also hear information on how you can help someone you suspect may be in a toxic relationship. To support this podcast and get access to amazing bonus content, click Become a Patron for more information. If you have a story to share, reach out to me, Ali F. Sugars, on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. Hosts and guests will often discuss sensitive topics in detail. While this is done with the utmost respect and dignity, this may cause triggers for some listeners. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Purple Warriors podcast. I'm so glad you can join us today. Now, of course, we have an incredible guest today, and her name is Annette Rose. Hello, Annette. How are you?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Ali.
So Annette is the woman's money coach, and I love that title. Now, Annette has a mission to empower at least 1 million women to take control of their own financial future and ignite a spark in them to make more money to invest for themselves so they can live the beautiful life that all women deserve. Now, if that is not a mission, I don't know what is.
Yes. I worked very hard on that mission because it's so hard sometimes, and it's like there's all these things that I want to do, and I somehow need to encapsulate it into a sentence. Yeah.
And what a sentence it is, I tell you what. So Annette, I can't wait to get into this interview today. So tell us a little bit about you and who you work with and what you do.
Absolutely. So as you so eloquently introduced me, I am the women's money coach, and I guess I do what it says on the tin. So I work only with women, and you'll hear a little bit more about my story in a minute, and you'll start to understand why my heart is really, really with women. And where I work is in the space of money. So you all will know what a financial advisor does. And I imagine those people are very fixed in your head. Yep, if I need products, that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go and talk to a financial advisor. For a lot of women, that conversation with a financial advisor never comes because there are so many barriers to getting to the point where you feel like you are confident, you understand, you know what you need to talk to that person about. And even to the point of not feeling stupid when you walk in the room. This is where a money coach comes in. So my work is all about, as my mission statement said, empowering women. And that means teaching women everything that they need to know so that they are really, really confident with how they are going to become financially independent. And becoming financially independent then leads to financial freedom. And that for me is the holy grail. If we can add in making some more money on top, well, let's do that too, because who doesn't want more money? So that's kind of my job, really. That's what I do. Yeah.
It's an incredible job. And, you know, I have to agree with you. I am one of those people who would get very intimidated walking into a room to talk to a financial advisor. So totally understand where you're coming from when you say that, and totally agree with you.
I was speaking to a prospective client yesterday, and that, you know, her words were, she said, I feel like an idiot. I walk into the room and I immediately, she's like, it's like, I can't even count to 10 because that fear of, you know, is just so huge. So yeah, it's very, very common. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's right. That's right. Turns into, well, for me, it's champagne mode. I turn into a blathering idiot, quite frankly. So yeah.
Sounds like something I'd do.
Yeah.
Oh goodness, Annette. So tell us a little bit. So how did this journey begin for you?
Yes. Now that is a big question, and I've spent a lot of time working on getting this really, really concise. So I'm trusting Ali to look at me, you know, and if I get to like 20 minutes of telling you my story, that she's going to start giving me these ones. Look, I guess at the end of the day, my journey has been quite a long and winding journey to get to this point where I recognized that this was really my heart mission, and this is kind of where the universe kept bringing me back to. And really started with the fact that I was adopted at birth. So I was adopted out by my mum, who already had a child, and she was living kind of in very low socioeconomic circumstances. And her parents said, we're not going to raise all these kids for you. You have to make a decision about what it is that you're going to do. And so she decided that her only option was to adopt me out. And she, of course, hoped that by doing that, what was going to happen was I was going to, have the fairy tale, more affluent lifestyle, that she was going to adopt me to a couple who was able to give me more than she was able to give me. Unfortunately, what happened was I was adopted by, I guess, by a family that themselves were living, albeit probably slightly better than my mum, were living in low socioeconomic circumstances. They were quite unhappy and were unable to connect emotionally. And, I guess by the time I was 7 or 8, we had moved to living on a farm in Western New South Wales, and things really, really started to go south from there. So, we were very, very poor. We didn't have money. My dad was really struggling to make the business of running a farm a going concern. It was a drought. He and my mum were fighting all the time, and the whole family really imploded. My dad became very angry, very abusive. There was no money. There was kind of no anything to do anything. There was no escaping. And things really just got unhappier and unhappier, to the point where, by the time I was 14, my mum was very, very ill. I believe a lot of that illness was, not just physical, but also this internal struggle that she had about trying to protect us, trying to give us the life, that she, I guess, when she adopted us, that she must have dreamed of giving us, and it really tore her up. And I guess, I remember when I was 14 that there was an incident that involved my mum getting really seriously injured in a farm accident. And I just remember being absolutely torn up and, screaming at my dad. I was furious because my mum's lying on the floor after this injury, and, saying to her, what are we doing here? What are we doing in this place? Like, I want to leave. I can't stay here. We can't stay here. You can't stay here. We're not safe. And she looked at me and she said, Annette, I don't have the money. I don't have the resources. I don't have any ability to take us away from this life. And so you are just going to have to live with it, as am I, until you are old enough to leave. And I knew at that point, I guess, that she would never leave.
Wow.
And, as an adult, you can look back and say, that situation, really, we were homeless because we had no choices. We had nowhere to go. All we could do every day was to make ourselves as small and as invisible as we could be, not upset the apple cart, not trigger, the inevitable violence that was coming from my dad. My adopted brother learnt the same type of behaviour. And so for me, life was a very, very miserable place. So, coming out of that as an adult, what's really interesting, and, I think this will really hopefully start to make sense to the people that watch this podcast about, the things that happen to us. Sometimes we have this phenomenal ability to almost pretend they didn't happen. And I developed this really, really neat skill of boxing things up. And, people have said to me sometimes, you have this phenomenal ability just to power through something bad that happens. And I'm like, sure. I just got all these little boxes in my head, and I put them in the boxes, and I leave them there. And so that's kind of what I did with my childhood. And I burst out into adulthood when I did my HSC. I left home as fast as my little legs could carry me out of there. And I was devastated because I was leaving my mum. But at that point, my maturity level was here. I have no choice. I can't stay here. And I'm devastated that I'm leaving you here, but I can't stay here and save you. That was kind of where I was at with that. And I had this phenomenal drive to succeed. And, I got a job very quickly. I've kind of been all the way at age 47 up to the rank of CIO in organizations. I've worked in financial services organizations, and as driven as I was to have this successful career, I somehow managed to find myself on the brink of bankruptcy, not once, but twice.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's a really big confession for me, because
Yeah.
what immediately goes through people's heads, and some people are brave enough to verbalize it. I hope you're verbalizing it, as you watch this podcast. How can she be sitting in front of us as a women's money coach if she's been bankrupt twice? Dun, dun, dun. Well, let me tell you. Let me tell you, I actually worked in financial services for over 20 years. So most of my career has been in financial services. And this is what I think is really, really interesting. When I got to the age of about 42, and the second time that I'd nearly brought us to the brink of bankruptcy, I kind of started going, what are you doing? Like, what's actually happening here? You are in a job where you are earning over $250,000 a year. That was my salary, right? Paid salary. You are successful by anybody's terms. You're living in this incredible house. You're living this incredible life. How can you be in this situation? And I knew that we couldn't be here again. I knew that I couldn't bring my family through this again. And the stress that we experienced was just unbelievable. So I went and had a couple of conversations with a life coach. And I was a little bit skeptical because, I'm a very practical, driven woman. There isn't much that I can't sort out in my own world. And where we got to was, this unpacking my past. And, I think I'd always been really practical and saying, well, nobody's to blame for that. My mum, who adopted me out, did the best she could. My adopted mum did the best she could. My adopted dad, okay, hate his guts, but you know what, he was probably doing the best that he could. And I'd really just squashed all that down, all those things that happened to me. And instead of bringing them out and acknowledging them, I was pretending they never happened.
Wow.
And yeah, and as we started to unpick it, what had, in addition to the bankruptcy, I decided that I was going to start a business because I didn't want to be working in corporate jobs for the rest of my life. And I'd found that I had a real knack for finding women who needed help. It wasn't women who necessarily needed a business. I developed this knack for finding women who needed more money, needed help, needed guidance, needed coaching. A lot of these women were women who were going through divorces, who were going through nasty situations. And, when I sat down with a life coach and she said to me, well, why do you think that is? I was like, I don't know.
I can answer it, but I'm going to let you answer it.
I know, literally this one particular day I remember it really clearly. We were sitting in a cafe and, because everything was so tightly boxed and managed and, everything was all kind of wound up. And I looked at her and, I said to her, oh my God, all these pennies just started dropping. And I was like, I understand why I'm collecting all these women because they're my mums. That they're the epitome of what I'm feeling called to help, what I'm feeling called to rescue, both in myself and in these other women. And then the tears just started falling and I was mortified. I was like, we're in a cafe. Stop making me cry. And she's like,
when it happens.
No. She's like, I'm not making you cry. I'm like, well, okay, well, you can explain this then, because literally I look like, you've done something really mean to me. But it was that moment where I started to really connect and say, okay, let's really start to unpack what's going on here. So, the bankruptcy situation, the spending of money, that's all very straightforward. When you actually go back and look at the fact that I had nothing, I literally had nothing, including love, including affection, including emotion, including, kind of all of those emotional needs, as well as the, what's the word I'm looking for? Just my mum used to hide bananas. Like,
Wow.
My mum used to hide bananas. That's how poor we were. And the fact that if she went and bought bananas, which my dad considered a luxury, that could absolutely kickstart a freaking volcano that nobody wanted to experience. And, when I started to look back and unpack that, it became very, very clear to me that your mindset and what you do with money is very, very much born out of the experiences that you've had. And in some cases it can be, like me, I didn't even put a label of being a domestic violence survivor on my experiences until about 6 months ago,
Wow.
because I don't know why. I don't know why. I think, I just just wanted to be able to say, you know, I've got this all in hand. You know, I'm in control of this. I'm in control of everything. And, you know, when I finally put the label on it, I was able to say, okay, that's actually true. That is actually true. A lot of your behavior, my behavior in my relationships, in my marriage, with my children, with my money, have all been born out of this situation that I went through. And I guess for me, what that means is that makes me an awesome money coach for women, because
100%.
I have 20 years of knowledge, 20 years of, you know, everything you ever wanted to know, and many, many things you never wanted to know about financial services, financial products, personal finance. I have all of that in my kit bag. But I also have this, go on.
Sorry, but you also have the authenticity of actually having experienced such significant hardship, like both in as a child, but also, you know, you are authentic enough and real enough and honest enough to say that you have been bankrupt twice. And, you know, as someone who, I haven't been to that extent, I thank you for that authenticity, and I really appreciate it, because, you know, when I was growing up, I wouldn't say we were poor. We didn't want for a lot of stuff, but I watched my parents work extremely hard for what they had, you know, overly hard actually. So now I have grown up, and I'm just starting to realise this in myself now, that I've grown up with a bit of a money hoarding mentality.
Yes.
And that in itself has actually created a lack of finances for me.
Yeah, it does, because you won't take risks. You don't want to take risks with your money. And often, obviously, investment is all about risk.
Exactly.
But, you know, I've worked with women too who, you know, they've saved diligently. They've saved and saved and saved and saved in everyday savings accounts, you know, where the opportunity loss is actually scarily in the hundreds of thousands over the course of 20 years. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, you know, as I said, I really do appreciate the fact that you are real enough to share that very real story.
Yeah.
And I have got absolutely no doubt that it is going to relate to so many of our listeners, you know, given what they would have and maybe still experiencing.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's, you know, this is not, you know, just the purview of, you know, children who've been through, you know, like me, who've been through that experience as a kid and what you brought into your adulthood. But of course, you know, women watching this understand completely you could still be sitting in this situation, and you will know only too well how finances can be used to control you, and how you can actually find yourself in a position where you are almost, as my mom was and as I was when I was a kid, where you become homeless, because without money, without independent finances, without the means, it's very, very difficult to imagine yourself making a move where you don't have that safety. Yeah.
Definitely, 100%.
Yep.
So I can tell that, I mean, it's quite obvious to all of us, I think, that you love doing what you do. So tell us a little bit about, you know, what you teach and what you share with your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that once I'd been through my own realization in terms of my mindset, that was a piece that really resonated with me, because to me, your mindset and the way that you think about money, the way that you are behaving with your money, whether you're conscious of it or whether you're not conscious of it, that is the most fundamental foundation of everything that we ever do in our lives with money. And I, you know, to me, I don't think I can say that strongly enough, that, you know, once you become conscious of why you're doing what you're doing with money, it becomes impossible to continue behaving and doing the things that you've done before. And I say that from experience, because the minute I became switched on and clued on to that mindset, I was like, oh my God, that's literally why I spend so much money. That is why money doesn't have a home with me, because I just, as soon as I get it, I want to spend it, because I want to give that little girl everything she never had, point one. And point two, if I don't, somebody might take it away from me. So I was like, what's that mean? Oprah's like, there's one for you and one for you. That's me. That was me in the past.
And the thing that I'm laughing at is that I am totally the opposite. So with all, I have been thinking about this a lot lately. It is very much like that. And especially with everything that's been going on in the world at the moment, with people in financial hardship, with the bit that's been coming in, I've been clinging to it to the point where I have had difficulty wanting to pay my bills. Now, these are things that we have to do, obviously, but it's kind of like, oh, yeah, I've got to part with that, but I really don't want to. And it's a struggle to do it.
It is, and you do. It's almost like a car engine that seizes.
That
we hold that money energy either so freely or so tightly that it can seize up. Like an engine that doesn't get oiled, you become this real, the money's not coming in and the money's not going out, and money's not, the money energy is not flowing freely. And that, that is, it's something that we need to work on to overcome. So look, I guess that's a long way of answering the question, which is that the first thing that I start with women is how are you behaving with your money, and why are you behaving like that? And we go on. I'm not a life coach. So, to be clear, I'm not going to be, pulling out timeline analysis and NLP and emotional coaching. But the work that I do is just enough for us to be able to become conscious and to say, okay, I can actually quite objectively look back and say, as can you, and in fact, as can most people, and say, this is what happened to me when I was younger, or this is what's happening to me now. And I can look at a list of questions and quite easily say, okay, that is me. Yeah, that is me. That is me. That is me. That is me. And then we go through that process to say, okay, now that you understand that mindset and you can acknowledge the behaviors, the second part of this journey for me is about connecting women emotionally with the purpose of their money. So the reason I say that is because if you go to a financial advisor and they go, oh, you need to have critical illness insurance, you're like, sorry, I didn't mean to rip off an old white man kind of insurer type person, but that's what always puts in my mind. I apologize to all of the fabulous women who are watching this podcast that are financial advisors, because I know that isn't you. There has been quite a traditional aspect to financial advice, but regardless, what often happens is somebody says you need a thing and you go, why do I need a thing? What is that thing? How does that thing even work? Like what, and under what circumstance, and then never mind the forms, the questionnaires, the grilling you get, that, that whole thing, whereas to me, it's about saying, okay, let's look at what you need to achieve in your lifestyle. So if a woman says to me, I have 3 kids and I just want to make sure that they're really taken care of. Okay, great. That's good. That's a fantastic emotional goal. Now let's talk about what that means to you. So just using that example of critical illness, for example, let's say you were very, very unfortunately to be diagnosed with breast cancer, right? Happens every day to way too many women. What is it that we need to make sure happens at that point? And that's the point at which you make that emotional connection. You say, okay, so in order to be protected from that type of a thing and to make sure that you guys can continue to carry on your lives as best you can during this really disruptive situation, that's when you need this particular insurance. And then all of a sudden the pennies start to drop and women go, oh yeah, okay. Take it to another type of goal. Let's say you want to buy your own house. You might be renting at the moment. Let's say you've come out of a relationship and it's you and the kids and, you're renting and you might be sitting there thinking, I could never buy a house. There's no way that buying a house is ever going to be available to me. I work with women and we talk about this and say, okay, if this is a dream that you have, let's talk about how we bring that to life, because there's lots of different ways that you can end up owning property. It doesn't mean you have to walk out now and buy a, $1 million property in Sydney. Yeah. We talk about, if that's the goal that you have, what are the steps that we can take to make that happen? So to me, that it's mindset followed by the goal setting. And then the third part of the puzzle that I bring to the table for women is really teaching you about the things that you think are scary that you could never do to manage your own finances so that you can be financially independent. And it is very straightforward. It is budgets. It is how do we save? It is, all of those pillars of being financially secure that we just don't get taught. And in a lot of cases, And there's lots of reasons why, maybe I need to invite you guys to come and listen to one of my rants on equality, because I have a fair bit to say about why women are most often ending up in this situation, not men. But we just don't acquire these skills, and we end up in these places where we don't have the skills that we need. And so, part of my passion is making sure that you get the skills that you need, so that every day of your life, whatever gets thrown at you, you know the answer. You know the answer. And if you don't know the answer, you know where to find me, so we can find the answer together. That's it, really. So think of me as a money bestie, kind of for life, if you want me. That's kind of how it works. So yeah, that's how I work with women. Yeah.
That's brilliant. And so I think that the thing that you just said just then, I think there's a whole nother podcast in that, is equality for women.
Yes.
Maybe that's a podcast for another day.
Yes.
But what you said, what you started, actually all of what you just said, just kind of, it highlighted to me that quite often, and this is with a lot of life coaches, in any space, or is when, clients come to us, quite often, in the back of their minds, they probably already know, like you did, it was probably there, but they just need that third person to be able to draw it out, and to be able to help them with what might seem obvious to a lot of people, or when by the time they get there, it might seem obvious, but it's not when you're actually in the midst of it.
It really isn't. And as I said, I come with all the tools and all the training and all of the knowledge and all of the experience of working in financial services for over 20 years. It would seem inconceivable that with all of that knowledge and education that I could have gotten myself to where I got to, but that is how powerful your mindset is. Like, it is just astonishing. And in the reverse, what is also astonishing is that once those pennies start to drop, and once you've had that help to see why these things are happening, things start to fall into place a lot faster, and you make progress that is just something that you never really thought that you could do.
Absolutely. And clearly, because of your background, you are the perfect person, as I said, because you've lived it. And now look at where you are now, which is fantastic.
I know.
Annette, incredible. So it's your story, honestly. I could talk to you and listen to you for ages and ages and ages.
And it's lucky that we have time bounds, because as I said to you, I can literally talk for ages as well. So.
Yes. I think there's a bit of rapport there between the two of us.
Yeah.
So tell us, Annette, how can people get in contact with you? Do you have a freebie available?
I certainly do. So one of the other things that I'm very passionate about is debt, personal debt. So I have this fundamental belief that, I understand why we get into debt. I have been there. I promise you I have been there. I was, little sideline, I was cleaning out an old filing cabinet on the weekend, and it was one of the most cathartic things I've ever done. And I found a credit card statement for $15,000, fully maxed out. And I looked at my husband and I said, that thing doesn't exist anymore. And we just looked at each other and went, thank God. Like,
shred it.
Oh, hell yeah. That thing just, you should have just so much paper. It was a very cathartic exercise. I feel like a big black cloud kind of lifted over my filing cabinet and just blew away. But debt is something that is really, really difficult to avoid, particularly, I think, for women who found themselves in situations, either trying to survive, coming out the other side of domestic violence situations. It's really hard. But getting out of that debt as quickly as you can and making those positive steps is really, really important, because for every day that you are paying somebody else interest, that is money that is not being invested for your future and making you money. So there's this real relationship between getting out of debt as quickly as possible to being able to make really quick progress towards being financially independent and secure. And I want you to know that you can do it. You can do it. If there's one thing you take away from this, I want you to say, look at Annette. She has come through these horrendous things. She's then re-perpetuated all of that crap 2 times over in her own life. And it is possible to get out of this, guys. I promise you. So what I wanted to give you today was a 10 steps to be debt-free freebie. So what you're going to find in that is that I cover, even though it is focused on debt, even if you are not in debt, grab the freebie, because I do go through lots of stuff on mindset. I go through goal setting. I talk about, lots of things that will just be generally useful to everybody. So definitely grab it. The good news about the freebie is my details are on there. So you can actually get my details there. Very easy to find me on Facebook. So all you need to do is put in a little @ and the page is Women's Money Coach. So that's reasonably simple. I know Ali will put the links up. And I also have a website as well, which you can find my contact details there, which is just thewomensmoneycoach.com.
Perfect.
Super easy. Yeah.
Super easy. Look, I tell you what, I'll be reading that freebie because it sounds incredible. And again, you are very authentic in your mission, in what you've been through yourself. And, on behalf of all our listeners, thank you so much for what you do, because I know, having been there, having been maybe not to the space where you are, but, not having financial abundance or stability,
yes,
is a tough place to be. And
it's horrendously stressful. To me, I see it destroying people, because it just, like you said, it sits in the back of your head and it's always talking to you. How are you going to pay that bill? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? It's just, it's nonstop. It's very, very stressful.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you go, ladies. If you're looking for someone to talk to about money mindset, I think Annette is your girl. And we will have all the links, and I would certainly put the link to that freebie below this podcast in the description. So thank you, Annette. It's been wonderful speking to you today.
Thank you for having me. It's seriously amazing. You can, as I said, I love, I will spend any time, anywhere, any place to talk about, kind of helping women to be financially free. So thank you for having me.
No worries. And yes, I think we did just come up with another podcast topic just there.
Yes. Do you know what? It's why women need to make more money, and we can unpack the whole system.
Oh, maybe that's the third one. Oh, let's not get carried away. Okay. Thank you, Annette. See you later, everyone. See you in the next episode.